All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 52 of the Everything NYJ Podcast. Liam, Italy Jet, and we are joined by our very special guest, Banks or DKB X Jets. How you doing, my friends?
What's the good word, gentlemen? It's a good day.
Very good day.
Yeah,
Gino?
got
It's,
Zach
it,
got Zach back for now. Let's see. Let's hope it goes well.
it is an
It will.
amazing day for us.
So before we get into the video, you guys know the drill by now. Please like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It really helps us bring wonderful guests on. Follow us on all social media platforms at Everything NYJ. We'll follow you back. We'll talk ball with you. Tons of polls up there. We're always doing some fun stuff on social media. Mr. Banks, where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty low key. I'm not like a huge social media guy. So I do got Instagram. I don't really do a lot of jet stuff on there, but it's DKB underscore Jersey. And then other than that, you guys can find me on YouTube, DKBX Jets, and that's about it.
All right, all right. So we're gonna get into a little bit. So Banks, how did it all start for you? How did you become a Jets fan?
Yo, it's funny. I just posted like a little short about this a few days back. So when I was thinking on it, I was an odd kid, or at least I didn't grow up in the best areas and stuff, right? So we didn't have cable and all the stuff. I would come home early from school, and the King of Queens would be on TV. So I got really
Oh,
into the show. I loved James, and he always had Jet stuff, at least in some part of his episodes in there. So I was just getting into sports. I'm probably like 9, 10 at this point, getting heavy into football, and I think I just started playing Madden, and the Jets, ironically, were one of the first teams I ended up picking too. And I just fell in love with them. The culture, the atmosphere, being from Jersey, I love all things Jersey. It was funny, doing a video maybe a few months back. There's a lot of fans that didn't even know the Jets don't play in New York; they actually play in New Jersey.
oh.
And so just everything about the team, the personalities that they had at the time. I grew up in the Chad Pennington, Vinny Testaverde era. So I got to see all the old greats, Kevin Mawai and all them. So it was just good times for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up around the same era. Like Chad Pennington was my childhood quarterback. Oh, the good times. Wayne Corbett, Curtis Martin, Lavernius Coles, Keyshawn Johnson. Oh man, that was my era, man. Growing up, like the crazy thing about that too is like during that time period, like my childhood, the Jets were in the playoffs. They were competitive at least every couple years. It's just been so long since we've been there, man. It's been so long.
Yeah,
It's a
we
real shame.
even if we weren't making the playoffs, we had a lot we can still hang our hats on, right? We had strong defenses continuously, top 12 generally. We were the ground and pound show. If you played us, even if you were able to beat us, you had a long day. We're running Sean Green down your back. We were running Richardson at the time when fullbacks were still a thing. So, we had a strong run. I think we're getting back there though.
Oh, absolutely. So we're gonna say what's up to the chat real quick. We have Richard Vasquez Jr., BX in the building. It's been a rough couple years, fellas. Yes, it has. It certainly has, man. So, Banks, what is your thought on the current state of the New York Jets?
Yeah, so when I take a look at things right now, my confidence is still high, right? I'm one of those Jets fans that I would say is like an eternal optimist, much like Robert Saleh says himself. When I take a look at how things are done, I kind of have to take a 30,000-foot view. When I look at the steps that we've taken, Joe Douglas, he's done a phenomenal job bringing in talent. Nobody really has a whole lot to say outside of his first draft class. And the fact that he hasn't really hit on maybe, more free agents than some of the other GMs, but free agency is always a toss up, right? Lakin Tomlinson looks terrible right now in this early portion of the season, but if he starts rocking out by mid-year, nobody's going to bat an eye at it too much. So I take a look at the free agency class. We have the Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas effect, right? He's purposely been one of the highlights for many people saying why they wanted to play for the New York Jets, where
Yeah.
previously we had to buy our way into a lot of these guys. And then it turns out they were either just chasing the bag, they weren't motivated, they were going towards the end of their careers, or they were just looking to try to secure that last big check, which we were willing to give out. Um,
Yeah.
Secondly, I take a look at kind of the scheme philosophies and things that they're trying to build, you can see that Joe Douglas and Salah are working in tandem. Defensive line and offensive line are premium for them. We've provided a lot of assets there. Now, has it been effective? That's up for debate, right? I think we realize we have legitimate talent on both lines. Things just haven't always stuck out. We're not probably getting an A+ from anybody, but we've done more so than any other GM or coach has done in the past. And so even as of right now, we're 1-2. It's the first win that we've had in September. I don't care how the win against the Browns, came out to be. But I can see the progression and some of the smaller steps that'll lead into a bigger snowball effect for us. And I'm still excited for it. I mean, we're facing a weakened Steelers team with a chance to go 2-2. And I'm still hearing a lot of people call for like Robert Saleh's head and all of this crazy stuff. And we're not even fully, a quarter into the season. So I'm personally still very high on the team. I can get into a billion specifics, but from, again, 30,000 foot view, that's kind of my thoughts on things.
All right. I appreciate it. It's a fair point, man. I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm calling for Ulbricht's head. I don't like him. I didn't like him last year. I think the defense looked much improved week 1, and then it just kind of fell off a cliff. And that was really the story of last year, too. Week 1 against Carolina, they looked pretty legit, and then they just fall right off a cliff, man. I don't seem to understand it. But Robert Saleh, I'm not calling for his head right now. But for me, like, the biggest thing with Robert Saleh is, he's the defensive guru, if you want to say. He's this defensive genius. His defense is what got him the job here. And he
Right.
says his defense is predicated on edge rushers, so we got him 4 or 5 edge rushers. We go in the draft, we get him guys. We have Carl Lawson. We have an abundance of riches at the edge rusher position, I guess is the best way to put it. They're just not getting home. And he's in the meetings, it's still his scheme that Ulbricht is running. He could hear it in the plays that are being called, and they're just not working. The soft zone isn't working. Guys are running, 5-10 yards of carry down our throats. We can't contain a quarterback. We have no answers for the rushing game. Teams are just moving the ball freely against us. So what is your opinion on the defense so far?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways you can look at it, right? A lot of people say, and this is one of the things that I appreciate most about Robert Saleh. He's been one of our truest CEO type, head coaches that people love to throw, that title out there for. You can honestly tell he has a pulse on the offense. He has his hands on the defense to whatever degree. And for me, which is another huge plus, because another huge staple of those old Jets teams was special teams play. He's been a direct, you can see a direct correlation in him keeping players that specifically are playing special teams or at least have high value for that. So most of the arguments that I've been seeing for the defense are that if he's such a, great guru, tell Ulbricht to step back a little bit, focus more on player development, have him play calls. We forget that that's going to end up taken away. It's very few coaches that are ultimately doing things at that level, right? I think maybe Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, Sean Payton off the top of my head, maybe one of the few handful of coaches that are really operating that way. Everybody else is truly running through their natural, setup. Offensive coordinators are going to run the offense. Defense is going to run the defense. The head coach will oversee everything as a whole and, change and call out things they don't like. For the defense, while we added a bunch of pieces, I think we still forget that even with Whitehead coming through, the biggest weaknesses everybody pointed out was run defense, the play of the linebacker unit, because we can't seem to ever stop the screen, and then free safety, assuming people love the Whitehead at strong safety. I feel like we have to play out of position a little bit because Joyner's been absolutely terrible. So if you go back and take a look at film, Whitehead is actually playing a little bit more free safety, whereas he excels near the line of scrimmage and he's not getting all those snaps. For the linebacker play, we don't really have the young bulls in there like we want, right? CJ Mosley is the leader of the team, and regardless of how people feel about performance, he's still going out there and doing an adequate enough job. Is he the top 5 guy that he was? No, but it's hard to bounce back from a lot of the injuries he was having. We're still trying to develop a lot of these other guys. So I think we see a little bit more success with like Quan and CJ paired up this week. But it's kind of like a pick of poison, I think, because we don't have all the pieces filled in on the defense. Very few NFL defenses do. Our run defense is much better than anything that we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years. That's already a checkbox for me. Our cornerback play is the best that has been since Revis and Cromartie. That's another checkbox for me. And when you take a look at a lot of the damage that's being done, yes, we're kind of playing this off-man zone coverage scheme, but a lot of the damage is being done in the middle of the field. So yes, that's a knock against CJ Mosley. That's a knock against Quan. That's a knock against Quincy. But we knew that's not their bread and butter. So the way I look at it is, if he's picking his poison, he said, let a defense have to kill us in the middle of the entirety of the game, which is going to be a hard thing to do. We've limited a lot of explosive plays. We've upgraded our run defense where people thought that wasn't going to happen. And, would I love to see more sacks and things like that? Yes. But when you also take a look at the numbers, we're up there in the top portion of the league in terms of pressure percentage. So we're getting to the quarterback. We're hitting him. We can't finish out the plays all the time, but I think the defensive scheme is working. And like Salah's been saying, it's only going to get better.
I agree 100%. Gino, you want to chime in?
I love hearing you speak, Banks. I've always have.
Yeah, you are a very good speaker.
Very good speaker. I agree with you, but at the same time, now we're the worst defense in the league now. Like we were 27, now we're 32. I just think if you've been to the Super Bowl with the 49ers, he was on that Seattle team as well when they went, and just overall he's just been around winning cultures. For me, that I can't get past is he's such a defensive mind coach. Rex Ryan made it work. Why can't Salah make it work? So it's one. Well, hold on. What I'm saying is, though, I know it's different. The era is different. I get that, but
Very different.
I just want to see him step up in other areas on the defense, because Olbrook, like I said, I want Olbrook gone. But the thing is, if you could just even tweak a little bit of it, then I think the fans and everyone will be a little bit, more happier, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think there's good points to it. I can't say that I fully disagree or agree one way or the other. I'm bought into what he's selling. I guess that's the best way I can put it from my end, right? I want to give him the time. I wasn't expecting anything crazy with the team until year 3 anyways, because if people go back and look at the 49ers when he jumped on, it really took till year 3. And they had the guys like Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and all DeForest Buckner and all these investments that they put in. Year 3 is where they took off. So that's always kind of been my mentality going in since he was hired anyways, is year 3 is where we'll see the true progress. As far as Olbrook goes, one of the things, and it was from one of my buddies that I was chopping it up with on Bleacher Report, he mentioned it as well, and it's something I actually forgot about. Olbrook was never Robert Saleh's first choice. I think it was Caldwell and he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he's making do as he's been accustomed to, with having to find secondary, third options and things like that. Olbrook never necessarily had a phenomenal defense in Atlanta. He made it work very well for 1 year, and then they seen a downtrend of success. So really, the only thing that's binding Robert Saleh to Olbrook is just the connective tissue of him being familiar with him. There wasn't a whole lot of other choices with him bringing a full staff of basically rookie coaches into new roles. We have guys that aren't necessarily doing any of the same stuff they've done before. So I think just like people are expecting that, we have a bunch of, sophomore and rookie players that are leading the charge, it's still the same thing with the coaching staff. Robert Saleh is only in his 2nd year. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest struggle for people with Robert Saleh, and even Robert Saleh himself, is that he's not a media guy. He's a player's coach. So he's getting killed in the media over a lot of these comments that he's saying. And I think people are taking it and running with whatever the media script is. To me, he's always come through as honest, open, and straightforward. And he's just trying to communicate things as best as he can. His most recent comments about the miscommunication issues and him, maybe redirecting the conversation to say, I think paraphrasing his comments were other teams have the same issues about 6 or 7 times a day. It is what it is. And, that sounds bad on the headline, but I mean, realistically, it's absolutely true. And it's not him deflecting, excuse me, it's not him deflecting ownership away from the team. It's just more so a matter of him saying, we have a young team. Yes, this is absolutely going to happen. And by default, I think he automatically kind of assumes that the fans have an understanding he'll work to get it fixed, and not that he's just leaving it alone and saying 6 or 7 miscues is fine. So it's a toss up. I would love to see some tweaks as well. I think a little bit more man coverage would be awesome, but in the same token, again, I think the off coverage is working and we're really getting killed by the linebacker play. So, maybe by the off season, and this was another point I was making as well, not to go too far with it, but a lot of people have their goals as well. I think even when me and you were chatting it up before for preseason predictions on the regular season, I think you said 7 wins might have been like somewhere that was a
You said that.
obtainable goal. I had 11.
Oh, you had 11?
Yeah, I had like 10, 11 wins.
I had 8. I had 8 or 9.
8 or 9. Okay, so
now I'm going towards 7 to 8.
Okay, which is still, I think, it's manageable. So my point with that would be, because I think a lot of fans are on the same, path. Let's say we're 1-2 right now. Let's say we even lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers and we're 1-3. Let's say we lose a bunch of games in the middle of the season. If he wins his final 6 games, then what? Are people still upset, even though he reached 7 wins? Or do they suddenly, see the lights and think Robert Saleh's the next coming of, who's, Al Groh, outside of Rex Ryan, was like one of our most successful regular season head coaches. So, it's all a matter of perspective and kind of timing. With us being New York Jets fans, is always kind of a right now, in the moment kind of situation for how we're feeling.
And also, I was hold on one more thing, Liam. And also Olbrook, his defense has to be successful with good safeties. It's what he did with the Falcons, and also he was an interim coach with the Falcons for defense. He only had maybe like a half a year to 1 good year. So with the Falcons, then he came over. So if he can we got Jordan Whitehead. He hasn't really been that great. I think he's going to be fine, but if we got to figure out the Joyner situation before it takes place. But if we can fix that safety position, I think that his defense can be successful because that's what it was with the Falcons. I know everything's different. I understand what you're saying about Saleh with the 3 years thing. I get it, but I think as Jets fans, me and Liam have talked about it a lot. We're sick and tired of losing, right? Sick and tired of losing. We want things to be corrected now. We don't want that saying of the same old Jets. We hate that, and I know you hate that too, Banks. But I just think, for the defensive mind coach as he is, I think he could be a little bit better. What do you think, Liam?
I agree 100% with you, Gino. And getting back to like his press conferences a little bit, like the 6 or 7 miscues a game, what are they? Like, what aren't they getting right? Like, they had all last year. We gave them a pass all last year. Rookie head coach, rookie coaches throughout the league.
Right.
All over the NFL. First year guys have found a way to get it done. I understand that we have a first time offensive coordinator. Ulbrich was like iffy at the time. We had newness all over this team. This year 2, they had a full off season together. What aren't they understanding? Like what is going wrong? What's not being communicated properly, and why isn't it being communicated properly? Like by this point, like the coaches, like the coaching staff and the players should know their playbook in and out. What is going wrong? Like I don't, and not only that, Robert Saleh, he's a huge like military guy. Like the whole 60% is like the Navy SEALs and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Those Navy SEALs they're perfect. They dot their T's, they cross. They dot their I's, they cross their T's. If he wants to base himself off of that, do you think the Navy SEALs have 6 or 7 miscues a game, or a mission, whatever you want to call it? No. So I understand, like, nobody's ever going to be perfect. And, like, normally teams make mistakes. That's how they lose games. But it's like the Jets are making way too many mistakes. Like, something isn't clicking. And DJ Reed said the same thing. Something isn't clicking between the players and the coaches. I don't know what is breaking that bridge.
I
Right.
wouldn't say too many, right? So there's a couple points that I have to what you guys were mentioning. In comparison to like the Rex Ryan stuff, there's a few things with that. I remember when he was first dissing Robert Saleh, right? He was saying he thinks he's absolute trash. He doesn't believe the vision, what he's selling, anything.
Yeah.
Complete 360, right? That man is out
Right.
here singing his praises, saying he'll be better than him. He believes in Zach Wilson, all these other things, right? So
Yeah.
there's tangible stuff like that that I believe in. And as far as the direct comparisons between them, remember that Rex Ryan's era ended for two reasons, in my opinion. One, Mike Tannenbaum at the time was relying way too much on free agency, and we were mortgaging all of our draft picks and not making great use of them for what the team needed, right? We weren't
Right.
picking great running backs. He wanted to pick a cornerback every year in the top 3 rounds, which wasn't, the best smart way to build a team. And then we were overpaying for a lot of these free agents. And then really a lot of his bread and butter was built on the guys he pulled from the Ravens. I mean, so that is what it is. But the second piece was he was absolutely hands-on with his defense, so much so that who was it? I always forget the name. Schottenheimer and what is it, Mordenwig or something like that.
Yeah.
The
Schottenheimer,
Morning way,
yes.
yeah. Yeah.
I
the
forgot their
offensive coordinators that he grabbed essentially were the head coaches of that entire unit, and it ended up creating a huge rift in the team where everybody felt like it was Rex Ryan in the defense, and then it was the offensive coordinator and the offense, and so they were just bound to implode. So I try to remind people of that as well. He can't necessarily. Yeah, I'm sure he can go over there a little bit more often and try to make sure things are cleaned up in the way he likes it. But he can't just, dive fully in that I feel like a lot of people are suggesting because he's going to end up leaving the offense out cold. And Mike LaFleur still needs a guiding hand. I understand Robert Saleh's not an offensive coach, but he understands how he would attack the offense and can provide the input and suggestions and things. So I kind of look at it that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting situation, but I mean, we're
Week
week
4 now.
4
Going
coming
up
in.
on week
We're
4.
20 games into the Robert Saleh era, and people are ready to start taking heads and pitchforking it up. It's a little wild to me.
Well,
I mean, I don't know about the pitchfork stuff for Salah. We're talking about Ulbrich. I think Ulbrich is what we're more frustrated with than
It's a little
Salah,
bit more
in my opinion.
recent. It's a little bit
I
more recent, but yeah.
I
I
agree.
get you either way. Ulbrich for sure. I want to say I can agree. I just don't think it was really a good fit. I think it was the best of a bunch of bad apples that he could have picked from, and he was hoping his relationship would, pan out with them. Um,
I'm
we'll
with
see
you.
though. I will say I'm absolutely interested to see if he does decide to want to take over play calling duties for the defense at some point.
Right.
I think
Right.
that would be an interesting twist, but in the same token, I'd be a little bit nervous if the defense still doesn't show like it. And I think people are looking for huge improvements. If we don't see like a blowout win or something, then people are really going to
Right.
start calling for his heads, which I'm nervous about.
I'm with
Well,
you.
let's take a little stroll down memory lane real quick. When we fired Adam Gase, do you remember what the Johnsons and Joe Douglas were looking for in a head coach? They wanted a CEO head coach. They wanted a leader of men. A CEO head coach is somebody that has control over the offense and the defense. We're giving Robert Saleh a complete pass on the offense because Mike LaFleur, like he's gotten some flack in the last couple of weeks. Maybe
Yeah.
rightfully so, but he's not really exposing his entire playbook with the statue Joe Flacco. So, but other than that, like last year we saw a lot of creative, smoke and mirrors kind of stuff, especially like later on in the season. So the offense I'm not really too concerned about, but the defense, it's like enough with the cliches, like enough with the all gas no brakes. Like you can't like I've been saying this, you can't preach all gas no brakes and then punt on 4th and 1, when you're trailing 3 scores in the fourth quarter. Like you can't do it. So it's just like I'm over like his stupid little catchphrases and stuff. Like I like him. I want to see him succeed. Like I don't want to see him go
Right.
because
Right.
I do see the potential in him. It's just they got to like really just get things clicking. But now that Zach is to kind of pivot over here now, Zach Wilson is coming back. You're really expecting to see that entire playbook holding up. The offense should look a lot better because the defense cannot win games for them, and the offense cannot win games for the defense. We haven't seen any complementary football, and really in 2 years. Really ever since Robert Saleh has been here. So what are you necessarily expecting to see from Zach Wilson coming back?
Yeah, I think we'd have to revisit Michael Floors like preseason, press conferences. I think he rolled out the entire plan, and obviously he didn't give out a playbook and scripting and stuff like that. But he mentioned it. We're going to be looking for him to play a lot more, in the pocket quarterback play style. But we are incorporating his athleticism, so we're going to have a lot of bootlegs. We're going to have rollouts. We're going to take advantage of what Elijah Moore and Braxton Berrios offers in terms of doing jet sweeps, and we haven't really opened up our screen game much at all, which I think comes back this week. And I thought it would even before Zach Wilson got cleared, because the Steelers love to blitz a lot, and not to bleed into that in case we end up talking about it. But, there's definitely levels of our playbook. I guess to quote Robert Saleh and a lot of his quotes so far, we're still playing the 101 playbook. We haven't bust out 102 of the offense just yet, because Joe Flacco can't do those things, which I think it was a lot of the reason why us as fans were stressing throw in Mike White or throw in Chris Streveler, because at least they offer the same kind of ability and, can help the offense function as intended.
Right, exactly. Are you at all concerned about the offensive line and like Zach's mobility there? Because like obviously like there's ways like around it. Like they want to be a run first, run the ball type of offense, which that kind of masks it a little bit. Maybe put him in shotgun every now and then. Obviously, George Fenton is on IR now, so beside Mike Rimmers, we have George. Do you know how to pronounce his last name?
You talking about Cedric Ogilvie?
Yeah, Cedric
Yeah,
Ogilvie.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, for some reason I thought his first name was George. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not. He's from the Texans, I think, right?
he played for the
I think he was
Seahawks,
just with the
Texans,
Vikings, something like
Viking.
that. Yeah,
He's been around.
Remmers was Vikings.
Remmers. Okay.
But he played with Jacksonville, played with the Houston Texans, played with the Seahawks. Seahawks were his recent team.
So he's been
But
around. He's been around.
they both have been around. Yeah.
I mean, like obviously, like, see, Joe Douglas gets a lot of hate right now because of like the way he handled the offensive line. But I think it was Buffalo Jet that even said, he goes, "There's not like a fifth string offensive tackle on this team that's a Pro Bowler. Like it is what it is. Like nobody could predict all the injuries that we have. George Fant going down, and then Dwayne Brown not playing, Mekhi Becton once again. So like the offensive line is definitely a concern. But are you concerned about this offensive line with Zach Wilson or just in general?
I mean, anybody that doesn't say yes, complete lie, right?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
comfortable in one spot. When I take a look at what the initial plan is compared to how things have progressed so far, coming into the season, I think everybody would have said Laken Tomlinson and ABT locked down two of our offensive line spots. Um, Regardless of how you felt about the three players we brought in or that were returning in Becton, Fant, and then ultimately Dwayne Brown, you could at least argue one other spot was done. So really the question marks were Connor McGovern, who I think will continue to at least be serviceable or average at worst at center. So you can argue maybe that's another lockdown spot. And then right tackle, essentially the same thing. So you can say at the worst case, we had an average line in the league. We might not have people that are excelling, but we shouldn't be a detriment, right? And now the way things are looking now, Max Mitchell looks like he could be a revelation heading into his second year. At least he's adequate.
Right.
He doesn't look overmatched for a guy that has called out a lot of his weaknesses himself. And then we have ABT, who, the guy's an absolute monster. So I'm glad we have him. Much like Buffalo Jet fan was saying, how many teams in the league have a fourth, fifth option? We're looking at Plan H right now. Who has a fourth or fifth option that's a first rounder or that was a previous Pro Bowler or had any kind of all pro on their resume? And so, Joe Douglas has tried to make the best of a bad situation at all stops. My only thing would be, personally, Connor McDermott is so bad that he gave up 5 pressures immediately in just one half yesterday and still ended up allowing a sack, right? The man's a human turnstile. So personally, I don't see why you wouldn't necessarily be able to throw in. I wouldn't say even Rimmers and Ogilvie, because I understand they still need to at least understand a decent amount of scripts for a playbook. But at this point, I would even take elevating Grant Hermans and throw him in there. At least that guy was a brawler. He'll go out there and try to tough it out with some people. And if he gives the same performance, oh, well, but how much worse can it get than Connor McDermott?
Right.
So I'm really expecting that we offer a lot of support via, CJ or Conklin to help him out on that left side, which interests me to see how Max Mitchell holds up. I am expecting a lot more running too, because that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers have been not their usual selves. They've definitely had a lack of success there. So I'm a little bit worried about our ability to not only protect from the left, but also rush to the left, because Laken Tomlinson's also been so poor. So I think he can leave us maybe playing only half of the field against the Steelers. And, that's not really an optimal situation for us. So we'll see
Right,
we'll see if Zach's athleticism can maybe mitigate some of that. We'll see some of those famous throws across his body to, 50 yards down the other side of the field. Who knows?
I
And
think we're
thank God
definitely gonna have to see. Go ahead, Gino.
And Dwayne Brown, I mean, we didn't expect him to get an injury too, bringing him in. I mean, he hasn't been injured the last 3 years, and I was thinking it's injured with the shoulder. And now I'm hearing he's going to come back next week, which is great because we need that the left side. And if we cut the guys that we got, hopefully they just go to practice squad. But I think for us, we had a lot of depth, right? Me and Liam have talked about this before. The Jets had a lot of depth going into OTAs, going into free agency, going into the draft and training camp. And then now, I know injuries suck, and I totally understand that. But when you have a team that was so good at the safety position, even the front four linebacker, and even on the offense, I feel like the O-line, as I've talked to you about this too with you, Banks, the O-line was always going to be shaky because Becton, with the weight issues, the knee issues, I feel like there should have been more backup plans. I understand, you're on your B, C, D, H options. Like, I get that. But I feel like with Joe Douglas, he should have been more prepared for that left side,
Yeah.
and should have just traded maybe Mims at the time, or traded Huff if we're not going to use him, and to get at least a backup in there. And now we got Dwayne Brown, and he's hurt, $20 million, 10 guaranteed. I just think for me, Mitchell was a surprise for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And surprise for everyone. So we lucked out, but I think that's my opinion with that part.
But see, like, to kind of piggyback off of you, it's like we're not doing Zach Wilson any favors about this, because like his injury was a non-contact injury. That's what, because he's going to be running for his life. Let's face it, he is.
Right.
And like like I said earlier, there's a couple ways that you can hide it a little bit, in shotgun, or you could have like two tight end sets and you use one of them as a blocker, but then that takes away like one of your wide receivers. So like there's really no win-win in this situation, which like it's unfortunate, but it's like injuries happen all throughout the NFL. Like we're not the only team playing on our third string offensive tackle. It's like I believe Cincinnati was down, pretty bad too. There's been a couple of
Right.
other teams out there too. They're making it work. It's like
Next man up.
what are right? Yeah,
man
it's
up.
like
Question.
but go ahead.
Yeah, question for you guys, because you mentioned something that kind of piqued it. You were saying you guys wish that Joe Doug was like a little bit. But I guess on what point are we talking? Like during the draft, or are we talking about once we initially seen an injury, or when were you guys looking to kind of see this move?
Well, I love Brees Hall, but let's face it, like was a running back really a huge need of this team? I would have doubled down on the offensive line, because like we knew, or maybe not even at Brees Hall, but like whatever. Pick your late round position. It doesn't matter to me. But did we really need like another like running back? Do we really need like the three tight ends? Like I get it. Like you go like best player available, but it's like what started off as a 6 to 8 week injury was all season, and then he comes back. Training. He misses all of OTAs. Granted, he had a child. God bless. But going into training camp, he's throwing up on the sidelines. He's out of shape. They won't even announce his weight because he's obviously overweight. And then he goes on this crash diet and just screws his body completely up. He's limping. He's in a brace. It's like the signs were there, and Joe Douglas just kind of like ignored it a little bit. And we saw this with Adam Gase too, where it's like if he wasn't ready to practice or ready to play, why throw him out there?
Right.
That was my biggest thing.
And Mims too. I mean, Mims had food poisoning, and then he wasn't the same. And then he comes back, he does a little bit well, but then if we're not going to play him, why are we keeping him inactive. I think we should have picked up another O-lineman in free agency. I love the Brees Hall pick. I'm glad we got Max Mitchell in later rounds. I'm totally perfectly okay with that. But I think there was a lot of O-linemen available that were veterans that we should have went after too. That's
Right, like
that's
I'm not
me.
disagreeing. Like I'm happy that we have Brees. Like it's not like a knock on Brees or anything. It's just I
Oh,
didn't
that's
know if,
not.
if
I know.
his position was necessarily a position of need at the time. But like I get it. You got to go best player available. So it's there's really no right answer. I feel.
Nah,
Banks,
I'm
what do
with you.
you think?
I was just curious on kind of what the thought process there was, because I don't necessarily have anything to argue against it, but I've heard a lot of people say this, and then their arguments are like, well, we had and I can't even remember his name right now, but we had Ikwanu that we could have picked up instead of Sauce and like all this other
Oh,
stuff. And I'm like, look, it is what it is. I'm all
right.
for the best player available approach, because and
Yeah.
I'm still fully with this. I think by next year we see a team that's ready to go out there and absolutely start smacking people in the mouth from start to finish.
Right.
But with that said, we're gonna have to take our lumps now. But yeah, I mean, when you look around the league, what are these rookie tackles actually really doing, right? And that's not to say they aren't better than what we're currently doing right now, but
Right.
we're getting production out of the players that we got. Like literally for a second season, we have a full draft class that's essentially producing in vital roles for us. So, you
Right.
know, it is what it is. I can agree with you guys. Maybe there was an opportunity at some point. If it was going to happen, I would probably say the draft as opposed to free agency. I'm kind of tired of buying offensive linemen. I'm much more a fan of, developing them, however long
Oh,
that
okay.
takes, if it's 2 seasons. But yeah, that's okay. I see the thought process there.
I
Right,
think
right, right.
I think overall though, we're gonna coming up in this game. Whoever we start could be McDermott or could be Hermans we might even put Remmers or Cedric in there. I don't think we are because I think they gotta wait another week. I feel like for LaFleur's offense, which we saw with Strevler in the offseason, right? We saw
Mm.
Strevler be the most successful, I think, because he can run, he's very mobile. I think LaFleur's offense is good for a mobile quarterback. And I think regarding the offensive line, whatever it is, it's going to suck. But I still think Zach can be mobile, and we're going to see like Moore and Barrios come alive. I think even regardless, like I said, of the O-line situation, it's built for mobile quarterbacks.
Right. And it's like you like to see him be mobile, but I don't want him to have to be like I don't want him running for his life
Right.
out there, you know. But it's like safely mobile, you know. It's like he last year he set the franchise record for a rushing quarterback for a touchdown, like against that Jacksonville Jaguars game.
Yeah.
He might even break his own record this year. Like he might. Like
Right.
that's the scary reality of it. But we do have two fan questions I want to get into real quick. You know, since we're on the Zach Wilson topic, let me just pull them up right now. So we have Eric Mincer from Mint Sports on Twitter says, "How healthy / ready is Zach Wilson?" I think we could all agree he's 100%. He's probably
Yeah.
110%.
Yeah.
Is rust a concern? Are you concerned that he might be a little rusty? You know, he hasn't played in 6 weeks. I guess we'll
Um.
start. Yeah, go ahead, Banks. I
Yeah.
want to
My
go
bad.
to
My
you
bad. Who are you
first.
gonna go
No,
to?
no, go ahead. Yeah, I wanted to go to you first.
Yeah, when I kind of take a look at it, and I've been able to peep a little bit. I haven't researched 100% of everything, but I know they were mentioning it's not like Zach Wilson's just been sitting on his laurels. He's been running through 7-on-7 drills, which I understand isn't the same thing. It's not game speed.
He's been in
Um,
flight school.
yeah, he's been in flight school, as he mentioned it. Yeah, yeah. I like that too. He's been in flight school, and then he's ramping up with his 11-on-11s now. He's going to get his first string reps. So I don't think it's rust in the classic sense of like maybe what happened with Becton, right? Where he was kind of doing positional drills and that's all he was really doing because he wasn't working with the team. I think we still go out there and we see him perform adequately right away. Now, I don't know what that looks like. I think it really strongly depends on the game plan, right? So if people are expecting, like that Joe Flacco 4 touchdown, 300+ yard performance, I
Right.
highly think that's highly
Right.
unlikely. But
No.
I think we don't go out there and see him make critical mistakes. I think we see a little bit of everything from him, because if we want to take a look at what LaFleur essentially built his offense around before, it was Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy
Right.
Garoppolo is not a world beater in any aspect when you talk about a physical breakdown of what a quarterback can be.
And so Zach Wilson has the plus on him there. He just doesn't quite have the experience. But, to your point, Liam, I think he fits everything else that they're looking to do.
Oh, I agree 100%. And then we had one more fan question. This one comes from NYC Bain on Twitter. He goes, is it worth starting Zach coming off of an injury with the O-line that we have in front? I mean, we kind of touched on this already. Or should we wait another week until Brown returns from IR? I mean, obviously he is playing, but Bart Scott kind of mentioned this too, where it was like, I wouldn't bring him back against Pittsburgh. See, not only do I completely disagree with that, because he's our franchise quarterback. Like, the idea of having a franchise quarterback is like that's a quarterback that's going to be leading the team and taking us to the playoff hopefully in a couple of years. If you want to get there, if you want to have that legit franchise quarterback, you're gonna have to you have to play tough teams. Like there's no cushion, there's no ideal landing spot for him to come in and be like, oh, this is the perfect game for you to come back. Like you got to come back at some point. I mean, like the offensive line. We touch on this. I just I like to get all my fan questions out there, but do you necessarily think that it's like an ideal situation? I don't think it is, but
no, even when the injury originally broke, I was marking the Browns as maybe the optimal game for him to return, and I'm really just taking a look at what defense he looks like he was going to have the most success against. I understand the Browns are elite. I'm not saying they were pushovers or anything, but when it came to even offensive versus offensive battles, right? I wasn't expecting that Zach Wilson was going to have to dig himself out of a hole against the Browns or even Pittsburgh. So those were my ideal target points once we kind of got the injury, timetable, I guess. But yeah, I'm very much in the same vein as like Bart Scott and them. What does an optimal game look like, right? Unless you're telling me we can walk in this week against the Steelers, he'll put up 10 touchdowns, he'll break every record known to mankind, and it's going to be a cakewalk. We can pull him out by halftime. Then there's no such thing. Everything about this season, which I think we just need to, as fans, have this drummed into our head. Everything this season is about Zach Wilson's development. I don't even think we necessarily need to have a hard yes or no that he's a franchise quarterback. We just need to be aware that this guy is trending in the right direction. And if we want to put some kind of qualifier on it, let's say he's at least in the top half of quarterbacks in the league, right? Or he's the second best quarterback in our division, or at least competitive with them, something like that. So I think there's different benchmarks we need to look at, but I won't say there's an optimal, team for him to return against. We just seen the Colts beat the Chiefs, for God's sakes. I mean,
right. The Jags too. Jags won too as well.
Yeah. Any given Sunday. That's the motto for a reason.
Right.
Absolutely. I really appreciate all the fan. I want to go back to this real quick though, where I appreciate all the fan questions, but I could not disagree more with this. Jets fans need to realize that Zach Wilson is not the franchise quarterback, but a player auditioning for the job. So, for some reason, Jets fans think he has proven himself. Well, he kind of contradicts himself because he hasn't proven himself. Like, we don't know what he is yet. In your personal opinion, do you think Zach Wilson is that franchise quarterback from what you've seen so far? Now, I understand, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. The numbers aren't great, but it's a work in progress. It's a rebuild. Things aren't going to be pretty year one. What is your opinion on it?
No doubt. It's funny to me because I try to avoid living in as much gray as possible, right? I like, certain things defined pretty well. I think what's gotten lost for us in the shuffle is what does a franchise quarterback mean? In Zach's case, yes, he is, but in the sense that we're not having him compete. We're not, and whether that's a good or bad thing, it is what it is. We're not having him compete. We're fully on board 100%. We're trying to give him as much support and resources as he needs to succeed so he can be the quote unquote league, franchise quarterback, what the general consensus is, right? Somebody that's top tier. They can control the game from start to finish. They can dominate when needed to. They're bringing victories to their club. So when I look at it in the sense that we're fully behind him and we're not up in the air like, okay, well, maybe it's Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe it's Trey Lance, maybe it's Mac Jones, maybe it's somebody we could draft next year. We don't have that situation. So I love this coaching staff regime so much because it's the first chance that we've really had to say we're all in on this quarterback. And maybe since Mark Sanchez, right? I think that might be a realistic comparison. He's the last guy that kind of had full resources and they just, screwed the pooch on it. But
this is the first chance. If it succeeds, amazing. It might have took longer or, a more roundabout way than people wanted to, but fine. We finally got our guy. If it fails, then we can really take that blueprint and look at it and say, what failed? Did we just pick the wrong quarterback? Did we have the wrong scheme around him? Did we not have the right coaching
Right.
staff? It's a much simpler conversation. So I would say, yes, he's a franchise quarterback. Is he a top tier guy in the league? Absolutely no, but that's what we're trying to find out this season.
Right.
I agree
Right.
with that 100%. But see, like the only issue is like if it does fail, there's nobody to look at the blueprint because Sal will be out of here, LaFleur will be out of here. Joe Douglas, he's probably not going to get to pick another quarterback. So it's like it is kind of like a revolving door. And yes, I definitely agree. Mark Sanchez is probably the closest thing that we've had in recent memory to a franchise quarterback. I guess you could argue maybe Geno, but I don't even think that Geno was viewed as a franchise quarterback. Steel Stone, even though I'm disagreeing with him, like I do thank you, Steel Stone, for commenting and being always in our videos. We definitely appreciate it. Sam was thought to be the Jets franchise quarterback since he was drafted number 3. However, his audition failed and he was out. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Joe Douglas can look at what they did to Sam Darnold and say, okay, well, we can't do that. And we're kind of doing that to Zach, because when Zach was drafted, they said to him, we're going to uplift you. Like, you're not going to have to uplift us. It sure as hell feels like we're going to have to uplift us, like he's asking for him to uplift us. That's. And then we have Abby Fresh here saying Sam wasn't bad. He had no running game. Yeah, like when you have Frank Gore as your running back, you can only ask for so much.
I I don't know. I think so. You mentioned there not being like much of a blueprint for them to look off of, right? I don't think that's necessarily the case per se. Maybe I'm taking it the wrong way, but when you're onboarding a new coaching team and a GM or one or the other, they're looking at what the roster looks like. They're looking at what went wrong, right? And I think every team across the league does it, which is why we say it's a copycat league. So teams are investigating, they're researching, what happened because they think they can do it correctly for whatever went wrong. So I don't think that's not necessarily the case. And I think even if it does fail, we brought in so many young guys around the same time, and we know these other guys look like monsters that the worst case scenario, and I've said this before during the rookie season, if Zach Wilson turns out not to be the guy for whatever reason, whether it's the same coaching staff, a new one, whatever, we're set up to where maybe we can plug in a veteran guy and we're instantly a playoff team. So it's still, and I don't think that's the way it was intended to be built for the team, right? Obviously, we want Zach Wilson to succeed, but the way
Right.
we finally conducted business with trying to build out this roster is hard to argue. It's hard for anybody to argue to me that we're going to absolutely fail. Are we winning 13 games every season? No, probably not, at least, based on signs right now. But I will take a 10, 11 to win season and we're getting into the playoffs consistently. So, I think we just need to really buckle down. And I think a lot of opinions, at least these hardcore ones, need to be saved till the end of the season. We don't have a great sample size to pull a lot of things from. Even what people are trying to compare to last year to this year, the miscommunications and everything. We have a brand new secondary. We absolutely gutted the thing. Bryce Hall jumped way down to our 5th cornerback on the depth chart, essentially.
Yeah.
So, that's not an excuse or anything like that. But I really do think people need to take a look at the bigger picture of what we're looking to accomplish this season and not necessarily trying to compare us and say, oh, well, we see Jacksonville out here doing big things and, things of that nature. We're not even last in our division right now. Things look great.
Right.
We thought Mac Jones and the Patriots would be crushing everybody but the Bills, this
Yeah.
season. So it's a long season. It's a long
Right.
season to look forward to.
I say
Right.
not judge everyone until year 3. I'm with that. Year 3. See what
Well,
happens.
I guess what we could have is like some progress reports along the way, like see how is it
Yeah.
going, how is it looking? Because like you want to start, you don't want to go into year 3 not knowing what Zach is. That's the whole thing. It's like we need to kind of know what he is. I don't see a situation in which he doesn't come back next year like that. That's just insane. But
Absolutely.
if he isn't what we thought he is, then you might see like a different veteran backup quarterback come in, somebody not named Joe Flacco, and just like have him compete for the job. I mean. I don't see a situation that Zach even like doesn't even start next year because like he has so much talent around him that it's like it's going to be hard for him to fail. Like I feel like he's going to have to try to fail. But Banks, I know you gotta get ready to go soon. So before
Yeah,
before we let you go,
I got like 15, 20 if we want to press this out a little longer.
okay. Let's get into let's do a little prediction video real quick. So what are your expectations for the Steelers game?
I think it's a win. I think I just put out, my preview video yesterday or the day before with kind of predictions. I think it's going to be a blowout one way or the other. I think I said 20-3 if the Steelers win. I think I said 30-14 if the Jets win.
Okay.
I think this is a game where either one of these teams will end up essentially completely dominating the other, and it's really going to be a matter of who has the less miscues. Our offense, it's shown, right? Our offense can be explosive no matter what. If you want to just
Right.
look at the passing yardage, Joe Flacco's been in the top. Granted, he's thrown 155 passes. It is what it is. Our run game, you can almost say, has been dominant. They just haven't been able to get the consistent touches. They're like 25 yards short of having 100 yards every game between the two of them. And then our defense, we've seen one kind of dominant showing. We've seen an iffy showing, and then we've seen a lot of solid performances in some areas. A lot of people are harping on sack numbers, but we're getting pressures. Nobody can say anything about the cornerback play. I think there's only so many weeks that you see CJ Mosley and at least now Quan Alexander kind of suffer in the linebacker ranks. So I think this will be a little bit of a statement game. I think we show out, and I think the Jets absolutely have a dominant performance against the Steelers.
They need to, man. They desperately need to. How do you think the defense is going to hold up? Do you think Sauce is finally going to get his first interception against either, what is it, like Pickens or Trubisky? Not a great quarterback either way.
Absolutely. The Steelers are another interesting team, right? In that they have a lot of weapons. They just don't necessarily have that proven quarterback to maybe, make the offense as optimum as it can look. I think with them struggling, if our run game holds up and we force them into passing, they have a young core still. Deontay, Pickens, and then what's the other name I'm forgetting?
Najee Harris?
No, not Najee. In their wide receiver group is Deontay,
Claypool?
is Pickens, Claypool. Right. So we've essentially been able to wipe away a lot of these boundary attacks for them. And when you take a look at how DJ Reed and Gardner have been playing this off-man coverage when they've been asked to, they're kind of directing everything to the front, which gives them a little bit better ability to kind of break on some of these balls. I mean, Sauce Gardner technically had a chance to steal 2 interceptions last week against Jamar Chase. So, I think we find a way to keep a lot of these offensive plays in front of us, and we can start attacking them a little bit more and come away with some turnovers.
Right. Gino, what are you thinking?
Something just feels different about Zach Wilson being back, and I feel comfortable that we signed 2 guys to the practice squad. It just feels different. I think overall, we're going to see a lot of people that weren't involved the last 2 to 3 weeks more involved now. I agree with Banks. I think it's either going to be a blowout on either end. I agree. I think it's going to be 30-20 either Pittsburgh or 30-20 Jets. It's Trubisky. You can get after Trubisky in my mind. It was hard to get after Jackson. It was hard to get after Brissett. And it was hard to who did we just play?
Burrow. Yeah.
Burrow. Geez, there we go. Thank you. It was hard to get after Burrow. I think you can get after Trubisky. So that O-line is very weak too. So I think those 2, but also TJ Watt's not playing. That's good. We still got to deal with Hayward. Hayward is still a really good player on the defense front 4 for them. So that's what I'm a little bit worried about, because what if they switch Hayward to the end and make him go against McDermott? Because you just never know. Tomlin is a very good coach, very well coached team, and he could have all kinds of game plans against us. But overall, I think it's going to be different now that Zach Wilson's back. I think it's going to fit. LaFleur's going to fit really well with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Tomlin is obviously a defensive mind too. The thing with I think that if we could stop the running game because they have a very weak offensive line. Um, I don't necessarily buy it. I mean, yes, they have a very weak offensive line, but I don't really trust their defense at this point because, prior to week 3, Joe Burrow was sacked 13 times in 2 games. We got 2 sacks on him. Like it really wasn't impressive at all. But if we could
I don't
kind of
know.
shut down Najee Harris, because would you stick Sauce on Claypool or who would you stick Sauce on?
Pickens.
Um,
Pickens?
I'd say Pickens. Pickens for me. Pickens has been pretty good.
I'm trying to think. It might be a toss-up. I think Claypool might beat him out in being more athletic, but I think Pickens runs better routes than Claypool potentially.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I want to say Claypool and Reed matchup, Gardner and Pickens matchup.
Exactly.
Okay. So this is going to be a big game for our defensive line, because Quinnen Williams. What are your thoughts on Quinnen Williams? Obviously, he's on a contract year. Would you be willing to pay him from what you've seen from him this far? I actually put a poll on Twitter on everything NYJ. Let's go through the poll real quick just to take a quick look at it. Let me pull it up here. Give me 1 second. It was fairly recently too. All right, so I said, as it stands right now, I'll ask you the question. As it stands right now, are you comfortable paying Quinnen Williams 15 plus million a year? Right now we have 63% yes and 37% no. What are your thoughts on that?
Real quick, let me get a helpline. 15 million a year. That's top 5 at his position, right?
Yes.
That's what he's looking for.
Yeah, that's it. Are we talking like a 6-year contract?
That's true. Is it a
I guess
4, 3, 4, 5, 6-year contract?
I
Yeah,
guess
that's fair.
I guess 5 would be average, right? And then you could probably get out of it after 4 years.
15 million a year.
Or just I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be but would you be comfortable paying him? It doesn't necessarily have to be 15, but 12.
Yeah,
if you
I
do
got
want to
you.
pay him, what would you want to? I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I'll put a number on it because I've never really been the cap guy. I usually have to, visit over the cap and spot track and stuff like that for things like that.
And mind you, too, this is also the top 5. It's one of the top highest paid defensive lines in the NFL already. So just keep that in mind.
So I would say yes. I don't have a number that I can tie to it. Here's what I think though, because this is year 3, right? And this is a comparison that I've made with Gino when we've talked before. It's the same trend we've seen at Alabama. Year 3 essentially was his breakout year. We've seen him start dominating. Who knows what his 4th year would have looked like at Bama? But irregardless of that, I think we're kind of seeing. Yeah, exactly. I think we're kind of seeing the same thing here. Statistically, he's been one of the most dominant defensive linemen on the interior, depending on who you compare him against. But he's not too far off from that top notch. He's been a lot more consistent this year than what we've seen from anything else. So even though he doesn't have the elite numbers in terms of having 5 sacks or something already, we're seeing him literally affecting the game plan on a week-to-week basis, which I think is the most that you can really ask for, at least out of that position. You're not going to really find Aaron Donalds. He's the best. I think he's in that tier of the best of the next bunch of guys below Aaron Donald, based on what we've seen so far. I would pay him. I think we continue to see him kind of, show out to this ability.
Right. He definitely does seem to be like an anchor on that defensive line, and there's really no excuses on why he shouldn't be getting home. I think he can get home on 1 or 2 sacks. I believe he had a sack last week. Sheldon Rankins shocked everybody. He had 2 sacks last week too. I don't think we were really expecting Sheldon Rankins to come out of nowhere and have a breakout game. I guess that you could consider that a breakout game.
I mean, I think this was low key the expectation when we signed him, though. I mean, he had a reputation as a pass rusher and not necessarily a run defender, right? Everything about this defensive line is that we're going to try to smack the quarterback, and if they happen to pass the ball off to the running back, we'll try to hit him on the way. But a lot of that is left for the linebackers and safeties to clean up. So I think this was the expectation. Will he get 2 sacks every game? Absolutely not. But I don't think anybody, to reference the Steelers, and I don't remember the last name exactly, but I think it's like Highsworth or something like that. But he had those 3 sacks in the first week, and then we haven't really seen much from him since, right? So anybody on any given week can break out. And I think, to go back to Quinnen's, contract question, that's the difference. Do you have guys that consistently make an impact on a week-to-week basis? And it's a small sample size again, but with Quinnen Williams, we're starting to see that he's impacting game plans. Teams are having to scheme around him. You see them throwing more double teams and chip blocks his way. And I don't think we still even seen the full versatility of our defensive line yet. Michael Clemens and Jermaine Johnson have been, utilized only like 34%, something like that, of the snaps on the line. We haven't seen JFM slide to the inside as much as we thought. It's still mostly been Thomas, Solomon, and Shepard and Sheldon to this point. So I think there's still potential for him to even bump it up a little bit more.
All right, so let's go to Steel Stone's question real quick. What would Q need to do in performance for you to want to extend him? I guess this will be the last question, then we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's already what we talked about. I'm not one to mince too many words. He's impacting these offensive game plans on a weekly basis, and for what we ask our defensive linemen to do, he's executing it at a high level. I am pretty confident in saying we can see him be top 3 ranked in most of the important categories as a nose tackle, essentially, by the time the season's done. I guess that'll be my wild prediction for this video.
Hey, you go for it. You go for it, bro.
Everybody in the chat, Richard, we have Steel Stone, we have Abby, we have Matthias Simon. Thank you guys all for your questions. Thank you guys for participating. We love it. Keep the questions, keep the comments coming. We love it. We're going to get ready to wrap it up here. Gino, do you have anything else before we get ready to wrap it up? Or?
Banks, always a pleasure, my friend. I know me and you have some things coming up, and it's going to be awesome. Go Jets. Hopefully Zach cranks it up. Me and Liam have a preview show Friday night for the Steelers game. Stay tuned.
11 p.m.
11 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. And it's at 10 p.m. Central time. And Banks, where can we find you?
Yeah. So again, Instagram, and it's not really a Jets related thing. It's just a little bit more insight into life or whatever I post. But DKB_jersey, and then on YouTube, DKBXJets. There was something I forgot to mention earlier when you guys were asking about the background too. I forgot. One of the biggest things that brought me into being a Jets fan was, and a lot of people don't know this, I'm not the most chocolate guy out there, but obviously I'm mixed. I'm also Italian, and they have a huge fan base out there. So, it's been good kind of connecting to that part of things as well.
Gino loves that. That's Italy Jet right there, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. You've been great. Thank you for coming on. Thank everybody for watching. I thank all you guys. I appreciate it. Me and Gino definitely appreciate it. We love having wonderful guests, such as Banks on. So definitely follow us on social media at Everything NYJ. If you guys did like this video, a thumbs up never hurt anybody. Subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out. It helps the algorithm. Thank you all. So we're going to be back Friday night. Banks, it was a complete pleasure, man. Thank you. We're going to head out of here.
Hey,
Shut up, man.
The pleasure's all mine. I appreciate it. You guys are 2 of the best to do it out here in the community. And break your thumbs, guys. Hit that like button for them. We need more of this.
Yeah, man. We're going to have you back on probably during the season, later on or something. We'll definitely have you back on. Appreciate it.
No doubt. Anytime I can make it work.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes, sir.